Learn about one man's efforts to make local schools stronger. You'll meet him coming up next on Carolina People. Good morning. Welcome to Carolina People. This morning we're at the Smith Center at Francis Marion University. We're focused on the school foundation, and we're visiting with one of its charter members, Trip DuBard. Good morning, Trip.
Hey, Greg. All right.
Thanks so much for getting in this morning.
Sure. Well, I'm happy to. Good to see you again.
Absolutely. So exciting to kick off the week and think of so many things going on in the PD area, the school foundation. Of course, we also want to highlight the YMCA and so many other things you've been involved in.
Well, my family has been involved in a lot of stuff. I really look to my father. He set a good role model for me, and a lot of stuff he's been involved in. And when I moved back, just want to participate in schools, and the YMCA fit me and my family pretty well, and helps me keep an eye on my kids, and hopefully help the community as well.
Yeah. Speaking of your kids, how many kids do you have, Trip?
I have 3 kids: Adam 11, Mary 7, Ben 6, and God willing, they'll grow up and leave the house one day if I don't kill them first. But they're good kids.
How exciting! Well, and you grew up for viewers on the Strand or in southeastern North Carolina who may not have met you or seen your family here in town. You grew up here in Florence in the PD.
Yeah, yes. My family moved here in '72. My father, worked with the NB Brewery Beverage at the time as a Budweiser distributorship, and I graduated from high schools here, and then went away to college and did my own thing for a while, and came back about 6-7 years ago, maybe 8 years ago. So,
yeah, I think I saw you were the president of DuBard Inc. 1995 to present, so a good around 8 years ago.
Yeah, it was. I came back and did other jobs first. I worked in the company all through high school and college, and then when I came back, did some other things and became general manager for several years, and actually just became president a couple years ago. So,
which is very exciting, absolutely.
Well, that's nice, but it wouldn't work if I didn't have really great people, keeping me straight underneath me and making sure that everything works well. And we're fortunate that we built a strong company with good folks.
So, DuBard Inc. was formerly known as
NB Brewery.
Okay.
Yeah, NB Brewery Beverage Company, and Mr. Brewery was a Lebanese immigrant, came over here early part of the last century, and built up a fruit and produce company, and then this is just the way I've heard it. The Brody family probably knows a whole lot better than I do, but was offered a chance to distribute Anheuser-Busch beers back when it wasn't quite as big as it is now, and he distributed beer along with cucumbers and lettuce and everything else, and it eventually grew into its own company. And NB Brewery Fruit and Produce Company no longer exists, but the DuBard Inc., the Anheuser-Busch distributor now, is a direct descendant, I guess, of the Brody family.
How exciting! What service area do you all serve, Trip?
We have 7 counties, basically the PD. We go to Chesterfield, Marlboro, Marion, Dillon, Florence, Darlington, and Williamsburg counties.
Wow, that is a big coverage
It's
area.
a lot. Yeah, we have some guys that get in the truck and drive for an hour before they ever get out, their first stop. So it's hard work. It's real face-to-face relationship intensive, and that's why we're just fortunate to have hired some really great guys who do good jobs.
And growing up in the business, did you go out on a lot of the calls? Did you go out on the trucks to locations
sure.
around?
Oh, sure. Yeah, in the summer, you get up in the early, crack of dawn, go out before the sun comes out, and come back, after it's set. Long hours. It was, they aren't quite as long now, thank goodness, but it teaches you, hard work early on, and especially being, the boss's kid, you can't slack. So I had that drilled into me pretty early too. So
good for you.
Long hours, hard work, and you understand, that people work hard for their money. And,
Trip, that would have been your first childhood job then?
Yeah, pretty much. I believe so. Yeah, I was cleaning broken beer and washing neons and rolling beer and loading trucks, and I could drive a forklift before I could drive a car, really.
Wow, Trip. We hear about in Europe oftentimes the instances of alcoholism are much lower because the children or young folks are made aware of alcohol at an early age. Wine, for instance, let's say in France or in Spain. Did that help you recognize? And alcohol is a very positive thing. I know you all monitor that very closely and promote very thoroughly, drink responsibly. Did you have some appreciation of alcohol at an early age?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the laws are what they are, and we do a lot, as you say, to make sure that people who are not allowed to drink beer don't drink beer, and we encourage them not to. We don't want. There's some bottles of beer we don't want to sell.
Right.
And those to someone who's under 21 or something we just don't care to sell.
Yes.
But yeah, growing up, I was in bars and restaurants and where people were irresponsible and made bad choices, and I saw that pretty early on, and I realized that there are ways to abuse this product and use it wrongly. And on the flip side, my father obviously would have a drink, and I could see where adults handled it responsibly. So at probably an earlier age the most, I realized there were ways to use it properly and yet ways to use it improperly. But I also was real clear that there were ways to use it legally.
Yeah, legally.
And until I was 18, when I was my age, it was illegal. So,
right.
And now it's 21.
Absolutely. That's so important. And that helps tie into so many of the reasons why you get involved in organizations that focus on youth to provide good momentum.
Choices.
Absolutely. To provide good choices, whether it's the school foundation or the Young Men's Christian Association. So many activities in your youth, and that's real special. Is that partly what's prompted you to get active with groups like that?
I don't know. It's either that or I think I probably just have been stuck at 16. I just never got over that. I think really having kids of my own and moving back to my community and seeing that I moved back from Boston, and when you move to a much smaller town, you begin to see that really one person can move the ball. Mm-hmm. It doesn't take a whole lot, in a community our size, any of our communities the size to make some difference or to organize some positive thing. And so I began seeing that, and I began wanting to do that. I mean, to me, I've always preferred to be doing something to move things forward than just sort of sitting around hoping somebody else does.
Right.
Nothing bothers me more than to hear people say, well, they ought to do something about that, or somebody ought to do something about that. I just, who are they expecting? So I've always tried to not do that and at least make the effort.
Good for you, and it's so true. Time is the most precious thing we got. Taking advantage of it. You and I both know folks who have a lot more money or fancier cars or houses, but no one has more time.
That's right. Yeah.
No one has more time.
Right.
That's one thing we got to take advantage of it.
Right.
It's so vital.
True.
I'm so glad you all have really jumped on that. Let's talk about the school foundation.
Okay.
How'd you all go about? You're one of the charter members. Who are some of the other charter members? How'd you all decide? That Florence District 1 was going to be the district you all rallied around and put so much of a focus on. I think there's probably 18, 19 school districts in the PD. How did you all determine that Florence District 1 was the one?
Well, there were really several of us coming at it from different directions, and we just sort of met in the middle.
Right.
From my own standpoint, I was on the periphery of one of the elections or referendum they had to help strengthen the finances of Florence School District 1.
Right.
And they were just increasingly frustrating, and from my own standpoint, it was pretty clear to me that our schools would become better if they had more money, and you obviously want better schools, so you have better educated workforce, more industries come here, the whole community grows, and your own kids become have better opportunities. And I began thinking, gee, if the community won't support a tax or more funding for the schools, what could I individually do? And I just didn't know. From my college, they never lose you. They're always dinging you for money. But I didn't quite know how would I give more money to my schools.
Right.
And quite honestly, there's a good friend of mine who's now at Coastal Carolina. He's a fundraiser there, Danny Nicholson. I don't know if you know him. He and I were good jogging buddies. He helped pull me through a marathon,
mm-hmm.
and through some of the long runs we talked about. And Danny had already started a similar foundation in Darlington County for the schools. It's smaller now than ours, but so that sort of got me thinking of the idea of a foundation. And I'm sort of a resolution sort of fella. So on December 31st, I'm making resolutions for the next year. Mm-hmm. And I made a resolution, 3-4 years ago, This year, I'm going to start a foundation. If it's just Trip DuBard marching down the street with a tin cup, it's going to happen.
Right.
And so, that was my pledge to myself. And as I was talking to other people about it, a couple folks said, well, you ought to go talk with Don Harriet out at Roche, Carolina. I didn't really know Don, but called him up, went out there, and he said, that's a great idea, Trip. We've already got the paperwork. We've already created it. And Don and Grady Greer, who's a former county council chairman, he's head of Toledo, Carolina here in Florence. They've been very active in education affairs a lot longer than I have, and obviously a lot more influential than I am. And so they had already sort of, at least on paper, created the foundation. But they hadn't pulled together a board yet, so they asked me to join the board. And Don, in a conversation, I guess I wish I'd realized what I was saying. Just one day, said, "Hey, would you be the fund development guy for us? Would you, right?" And just being gung ho, I said, "Sure, that'd be great, And then the next week, Grady Greer said, "Well, we'd like to raise $1 million." And I said, "Yeah, let's do it." I had no idea what I was getting myself into.
Yeah.
So that's how it came about. And the idea was, we can't be everything to everybody. And focusing on a school was probably too narrow, and focusing on 18 or 20 school districts might be too thin.
Right.
But one school district that serves sort of the central city of the region might be manageable, and at least a good first effort. So that's why we did that. It was manageable, and so from there I think we kicked it off in the fall of 2000, and we've just been churning ahead since then.
Absolutely. Fall of 2000, in 3 years, 36 months, you all had raised $1 million.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Well, at the time we were hoping to do it in 1 year, so I don't know if it's incredible or not. But looking back on it, one of the things that we really haven't publicized, but I've been curious. I've looked at other. I've tried to find out what else is out there. Is this incredible? I just didn't know. And there are other private foundations other than the one Darlington has and ours, but I can't find any that are bigger in South Carolina. In fact, I haven't really looked nationally, but in South Carolina, the biggest one I could find that as an endowment is only around $150,000, $175,000.
Oh, come on, really?
Yeah, as an endowment. There are others that raise money, but they pass it
right.
through each year.
Sure.
But ours is designed to be an endowment that will then use the interest to spin off and service projects at district requests.
Now, if someone wanted to make a gift and really focus on a certain year, they could make that. I mean, does it have to go into the endowment, or can they specialize something within the foundation?
Right
Right
now, it's only to the endowment.
All goes into the endowment.
I say that it all goes in the endowment. We could be the pass-through. We're set up to do that. If someone wanted to, give something to a school, it can and we've had one pass-through gift like that.
Right.
But for the most part, it's anything that comes in goes into the corpus, and then grows and is there forever and ever. So, but we're actually talking about some different approaches to that too that may be more flexible.
In this year, you all expected to begin doing some of the grants, and
Yeah.
how will those work? Have you all come with all that together to make determinations as to how are there expectations as to how the dollars will be allocated, or what those dollars will be? Is that something you all can talk about yet?
Sure, I'll tell you, where we stand.
Yeah.
Our guiding principles and what our sort of very general ideas are is the money will not go to normal district operating expenses. We're not going to pay for water, paper, things that really the taxpayers ought to be paying for.
Right.
I always say these should be the things that make good schools great. So this should be the extra, right? That really help us become better. We're not about a computer in the library. We're about computers in all the libraries. So no grant will be under $10,000. We're not about little couple $100 things. We want to do things that make an impact district-wide as much as possible. It'll be toward things like academic achievement, teacher quality and training, maybe district training, administration, staff, that improvement. Now that's pretty broad. Now how it'll actually work in terms of a process, I actually was meeting yesterday with some folks trying to get some ideas on that, and we're working toward that. And I hope by the end of the month we'll have a clear application process that we can communicate to the schools so they can do it. But the things that as a foundation board we're looking at is making sure that it's transparent, very clear to people, not only how to apply, but how they'll be judged, so that we can then that everyone knows what the playing field is, and they can all compete on it for it fairly.
And the judging will be made by the board of, y'all have a board of directors?
Yeah.
Or
We have a foundation board,
Uh-huh.
and the way the grant process right now is set up in our bylaws is that the District 1 Board of Trustees will make the request to the foundation board. So what I believe will happen, what we're sort of working toward, is developing a process with District 1 where they will actually do the solicitation of grant projects. They will sort of vet the projects in-house through some process, and then what I expect will maybe their board will recommend 2 or 3 projects to us, and we will choose 1 or 2 based on our funding ability.
How exciting.
It's
Golly,
great.
Tripp,
It really is exciting.
Get you juiced. But y'all don't have an executive director. A lot of this just goes through the board now.
That's one of the things I'm proud of. We raised $1 million with nothing.
Right.
Nothing.
Right.
We have no staff. We have no office. We don't have,
Yeah.
we have nothing except really committed people.
Good.
We have
Good.
a lot of people who really care about this.
Right.
And they volunteer their time. They volunteer their equipment. They volunteer their stuff. And we've had 2 very successful fundraising dinners. One you were at.
Oh, yeah, sure.
And we do stuff. And I guess our next biggest challenge, one thing that I'm working on right now, is creating an ongoing infrastructure so that we sort of institutionalize these volunteers, still on a volunteer basis, but we know, okay, you're going to you'll take care of the dinner, or you'll be the PR person, or you'll do this or that. Because right now we've been sort of ad hoc, and it's worked. We pulled it together, but we just want to make it good for the long term and see how long we can take it out like this.
Which is so important. I was so it was so exciting this weekend. David and Debbie Harwell had dinner at my house, and I know David was the recipient of your award this year, the school foundation, or the recognition. So exciting hearing him talk about that trip. DuBard was so pumped, and he said we ought to set these foundations up everywhere. I mean, these should be all over. These need to happen in other areas, not all in the PD area, but in other areas of the state. I know there's 2 in Charleston. There's 1 in Greenville. You talk about 1 in Darlington. There's a really old one there in Aiken. I know Hayne Hip was involved in setting up one there in Greenville, very active one. And, of course, David had said this is a real momentum and something that can happen in other areas. I was excited to hear that.
I really think it's an untapped market.
Yeah.
I'll go to civic clubs and I'll ask people, okay, everyone that can remember the name of your freshman, English teacher in college, raise your hand. And I'll get maybe 2 or 3 people raise their hand. Then you say, all right, now everybody can remember the name of your first grade teacher, raise your hand.
Oh, yeah.
And everybody remembers a first grade teacher. But then you ask them, where does your discretionary donations go to? And they're all giving them to the colleges, which isn't a bad thing. Here we are sitting in Francis Marion. I mean, that's a good thing. But the warm fuzzies, the things that I think people really connect with, are your K through 12 teachers. I know I do. Those are the people that really helped form me. College helped, but it was the K through 12 people that I feel the most appreciation to. But yet we don't give back as much, and I think it's because it hadn't been an easy vehicle to.
Well, now taxpayers, the taxes you pay or the mills that are set, or how does that work? I mean, how does the funds right now get to the schools? Does it go to Columbia and then come back to the districts? Did you ever understand that, or before setting up the school foundation?
Yeah, right now, I mean, each district has its own funding, cycle, and that's some of the big arguments going on in the state right now.
Right.
There are, is it unequal in the way Columbia raises their money versus the way, say Darlington or Hartsville or Marion raises their money, and are they getting? So my understanding is a combination of local support and state support. And what happens is the state will, promise $1 and then give you 80 cents. The next year give you 75 cents, and the local districts then have to supplement that, and some are, better able to do that than others.
Tripp, I think the most exciting aspect here of the school foundation is you're really saying for every $1 that comes in, except for expenses like they're associated with a dinner or otherwise, but for every $1 that comes in, $1, I mean, is really coming in. There's not that heavy overhead.
There's no overhead right
incredible.
now. I mean, there are occasional expenses. We pay for the paper that goes on billboards and stuff.
Sure.
But you're not paying for someone to sit around and move papers around a desk or for a telephone or anything like that. And every $1 that's coming in, will always be there. It's always going to grow. That's what I try and tell people. It's not like it's coming in and going out, or
Right.
20 cents is going to
Right.
someone's pocket.
Right.
It's all going right now out to help the schools.
Now, y'all may grow so large at some point that you'd have to hire an executive director.
Yeah,
at the
that may
same
happen.
time, that may be funded by Roche or DuBard or Carolina.
And we're looking at maybe contracting out some things
Right.
so that you do have staff. You do have someone that is focused on certain pieces of the stuff. Like we have to pay for audits and of our books and those sorts of things. But for the most part, I don't see us within the next couple of years at least having a full-time executive, because we've been able to do okay. And I think again, if we can harness the volunteers' energy, we'll be able to keep doing this for a while.
The Fund Development Committee Chairman for the School Foundation. I think day after tomorrow you're the incoming president of the Florence Area YMCA, obviously the president of DuBard Inc., a multiple marathon runner. How do you have time to be the father of 3 kids, Trip?
I have a good wife.
You out-married yourself, yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I have a good wife, and a lot of these things that I'm doing involve my kids.
Yeah.
So they don't conflict. They
Right.
actually complement each other, and I feel good about doing them.
That's wonderful. Trip, one thing we didn't talk about, we got about 4 or 5 minutes. You got a degree, I think, in history, and then later went into journalism.
Yeah.
Started early on at
Yeah.
the Sumter item, maybe,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
at AP, and
Yeah.
we're working the Myrtle Beach Sun News,
Yeah.
and one of our few guests who actually has not only Duke on his resume, but also Harvard University.
How about
That's a
that?
big deal.
How about that?
That's
Yeah.
huge, man. That experience in Cambridge was special.
Oh yeah. I had a good time. Journalism, as you know, is just a hoot. I mean, for anyone who's curious, it's a great job. I mean, they pay you to ask questions and stick your nose in other people's business. So I love it. But over time, it's not really a family man's game.
Yeah.
And so and it was it was natural evolution from journalism to beer. It just
Yeah,
sort of worked
that's
out.
right.
But
right.
So, but it's a lot of fun. There was a Sumter Daily item. in fact.
Okay, the Sumter Daily item, and then the Greenville News. I think I saw you were the AP.
Yeah, I was the political guy there for
Right.
a while. That was a lot of fun. They had, this time of year we were just totally stoked. Anytime, any political story that came out of South Carolina, I was the either wrote it or edited it before it went out. And so you were
Exciting.
dealing with all the machinations of politics, which is I find interesting.
Yeah. Did you meet your bride in the journalism side or
Yeah.
the Boston side?
No,
or-
yeah, she covered Florence County, and I'm sorry, she covered Sumter County, and I covered I covered Sumter County. She covered City of Sumter when we
So you
both
all
met
met
at
back then in the late
Yeah.
80s.
Yeah, the Daily Item. Yep.
How exciting. And she followed you. Now, I think I saw there was a 6-month stretch there in Czechoslovakia. What carried you over there?
Well, that gets to almost another part of my life. But I traveled for a year right after college and backpacked around Europe and didn't feel like I ever finished what I was set out to do. And so my wife and I decided when we got married that we wanted to travel around the world before we had kids. So
Wow.
we just saved up our money, which wasn't much, as you know, working as journalists. But we bought an old fixer-up house. And when the Berlin Wall fell, we were in Colombia. We'd pretty much finished the house, and we essentially spent everything we'd saved for 10 years
Yeah.
and went around the world. We backpacked around the world. We lived in Prague for about 6 months. The Berlin Wall fell in October, and we were in Prague by July.
How exciting.
It was great. Yeah.
With all the turmoil going on in the international scene or traveling or otherwise, do you think you'll encourage your 3 kids to backpack?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
Nothing will stop it.
No, I mean, the world is what it is, and I mean, just becoming dumber about it doesn't help it.
Good.
I think,
Good for you.
they got to put themselves out there and learn and and figure out how to deal with it. So yeah, absolutely, I want them to get out there.
Have you begun introducing the 3 of them to the family business?
Or
that may be journalism. That's right.
No, it's the beer. No, they're a little young to
Right.
know too much about that, but yeah, they know what we do, and actually it's led to some good conversations on choices and when it gets to be their time and when it's not their time when alcohol's not appropriate. So
Mm-hmm. What makes Trip DuBard tick? I mean, all these aspects. This is a heck of a lot of magnificent sides of it. When you think about both the journalistic side, we didn't even get into what you were doing up there in Cambridge or up in Boston. I think I saw the Management Ventures doing a little work up there. Can you share real quick about that? It was so fascinating. It seemed like a...
What a Management Ventures?
Yeah.
Sure. Well, once I got out of the Kennedy School, frankly, what I was trying to do was transition from, I guess, journalism into from the creation of information to the use of information. Right? How do you use information? And the firm I worked with in Boston, they looked at large retailers like the Walmarts and the Kmarts of the world, and the way that they have, especially Walmart, became and continues to grow so much is their use of information. They just dominate. They know everything that goes through everywhere, and knows about it, knows how to use it, and uses it well. So that was sort of again a natural transition for me. I'd done some work at MIT on their use of electronic information dissemination and the electronic newspapers, and so when I left the Kennedy School, went to MVI, studied the Walmarts of the world. That was interesting, and actually it was a large reason why I decided to come back to family business, because those large retailers are having such a big impact on our business.
Mm-hmm. Traveling 7 counties in his youth, and then traveling internationally with his wife before they actually set out to have a family. The excitement of getting back to the family business and getting back to the opportunity to serve the community through vehicles like the School Foundation, the Family YMCA, or the United Way. The commitment's great. The Trip DuBard's made it. Trip, thanks so much for being with us this morning.
Sure, my pleasure.
Stay tuned to more Carolina People coming up next. We want to thank Trip DuBard and all the amazing board members of the School Foundation for making such an incredible effort to support Florence District 1 and making today's Carolina People so special.